Welcome to Healing Wisdom, a Thursday morning talk show featuring guests sharing their stories and knowledge. We discuss the healing aspects of the arts, metaphysics, social justice, and adventure through all types of terrain. So join me, Pandora Peoples, here on WOMR 92.1 FM in Provincetown and WFMR 91.3 FM in Orleans. We're streaming worldwide at WOMR.org. Today, Emmy and GLAAD award-winning filmmaker Elina Street joins us talking about her new short, My Best Friend. My Best Friend screens at the Provincetown International Film Festival on Thursday, June 13th at 11 a.m. at the Art House and Saturday, June 15th at 6 p.m. at Fisherman Hall. Elina is the co-director, creator of the Lesbian Bar Project docuseries. Her TV credits include The Sinner for Showtime, Gotham for HBO, and Elina recently directed Celine Dion's big editorial comeback in Vogue's Life and Looks. Welcome, Elina. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Your new film is beautiful. I really appreciated it so much. It follows the two best friends who cross the line from friends to lovers. So what inspired you to write and tell this story?
So I have, as you mentioned, worked in the documentary world for the past few years, and I really missed and craved working with actors and workshopping a script. And I've always been very interested about blurring the lines between friendship and love, and also, most importantly, representing intimacy on the screen. And I think that a lot of the times female intimacy is represented through the male gaze in a way that feels very performative. And for me, I really felt my duty as a queer female filmmaker was to tell the story in a way that felt respectful and also beautiful. So I really wanted to tell that story.
And that really comes across. The intimacy between the friends and the way you handled it was so sweet and tender.
I'm a big proponent of achieving some type of realism on the screen. But actually, even though my films feel like they're being improvised, it's all scripted. I am a French expat living in the US, and I speak French and English with my close friends who are also expats. So I wanted my film to be bilingual, to really have this intimacy within the language as well. So I think what you're referring to can also be seen with the way that the actresses communicate with one another. They have their secret language, and that brings them even closer. And we did a lot of workshopping of the script to try to get to that feeling of authenticity. But a lot of it ended up really just being heavily workshopped and then very much so scripted. I think that we had a moment on set where we were working with our intimacy coordinator, and both my lead actors, even though they have worked in intimacy scenes in the past, they had never worked with an intimacy coordinator, and they were never asked to put words on how they felt. And so all of a sudden, that felt very vulnerable for them. And they did mention, we felt like we let down our guard and it felt real.
What are your thoughts on film showing intimacy at this elevated level?
I think it's extremely important. I spoke with my intimacy coordinator, Amy Northup, about this at length. And she is also a queer woman. And a lot of the times, the jobs that she gets, whenever it's a queer intimacy scene, it's mostly men, actually. And it's very rare for her to get the opportunity to intimacy coordinate a scene with women. So I think it's absolutely wild that we're still having this disconnect where there's this fear of showing women in their beautiful, intimate selves, because I think there just hasn't been enough. I mean, there has been some depicted by the male gaze, but there needs to just be more depicted by women. And the more I grow into my career, the more I think it is actually my duty to show this, because without showing, without visibility, we become invisible.
I love how you portray an innocence and a sweetness and a kindness, and you just don't see that very often.
Absolutely. I think that a lot of the times when we see queer stories, it's usually through the lens of a coming out story, or it can be through the lens of trauma. And with this film, I would like to show that this is a universal story that can happen between anyone. And it just so happens to be two female best friends in this case. But we had our premiere at Tribeca a few days ago, and a lot of people, audience members, came up to us and said that they had lived this before and that this was very relatable. And I think that's what's beautiful about film is we tell stories that people can connect with and people can bring to their world as well. They can take something from it and then give it to someone else.
And can you speak a little bit more about the importance of female directors? Like what female directors bring to the table?
Well, there are still so few female directors, and it's unacceptable. Unfortunately, the industry is not doing enough to still hand us the mic. And we simply don't, we're not privileged in that we don't start in the same place that a cis man would start. Every time I start a job, every time I get a job, I think it's a miracle because I feel like I have to start all over again every time. And I think it's extremely important for female directors to stay united. And big shout out to my co-director from the Lesbian Bar Project, Erica Rose. This is really a testament to queer friendship between like the project has really just been birthed by our friendship, but also like the need to create something together. And I just feel very empowered by that. And I think it's so important for female directors to stay together and to create their own place in our industry that doesn't have a place predefined for us.
Can you talk about your docuseries, The Lesbian Bar Project? It's available on the Roku channel, and it stars and also is executive produced by Leah Delaria.
We started the Lesbian Bar Project in 2020 as a response to the very big decline of lesbian bars in the country. Erica Rose, my co-director, and I came across an article that said that there were 16 remaining lesbian bars in the country and that COVID could just bring that number down to 0. So we were absolutely appalled and shocked by that statistic. Even though we're very much ingrained in the community, we had no idea the numbers were so low. So we decided to start a PSA that then became a short film that then became a series, really raising awareness about the importance of these spaces, prioritizing queer women. But also one thing we do say is that lesbian bars are not just for lesbians, they're for the trans community and they're for the non-binary community. And now we're just so lucky to have the language to bring everyone together, which everyone was a part of those spaces in the past. We didn't necessarily have the language, and now we do. The series evolved now for the past 4 years, and we actually just released our first international episode because we realized that the lesbian bar scene in general is at risk. There's a lot of gayborhoods in big cities that cater mostly to men, and we very rarely see lesbian bars. There's a lot of reasons for that. I can go into detail if you'd like. The biggest one is gentrification, the rise of rent, but also the fact that there are still very few small businesses owned by women. We are still seeing a big income discrepancy between men and women. Queer women as well are still being paid less than men. We also have less spending power than men because we have not as big incomes. And then women are more likely to have children, so they don't necessarily go out as much. We also don't necessarily drink as much. So we actually these spaces, lesbian bars actually also do rely on allies to help patronize. And then there's been also the shift to online culture that has deeply decreased this need to go to a space, except we argue that it is the most best memories that you'll create in a space, and that, meeting someone spontaneously is really the best way to meet someone, and to really get yourself out there. So yes, I think it's a form, in a way, it's a form of activism to show up to your places, to make it to your spaces, to your safe spaces that cater to your marginalized community in order to make sure that they can be alive.
Your series that goes to Berlin now, right? Or what's
Yeah, so the new episode we actually shot last year, and it just US premiered in New York at the Nighthawk, and it's available online, but it does explore the Berlin and Cologne queer nightlife scene. It's a little bit less bar specific than our series. Our series is very much, each episode is about a bar in a different state and the bar owner and the communities that they serve. This new episode is longer and it touches more upon several spaces, party collectives, activists, and patrons as well.
So what are your favorite standout memories of your whole journey with this project?
It's hard to really pinpoint one because in New York, we have geographical privilege, and we're lucky that we have assimilation and that we can be who we want to be in a way that feels relatively safe. But for example, when we went to document Boycott Bar in Phoenix, Arizona, or Pearl Bar in Houston, Texas, we were just blown away by the importance plus of those bars. People drive hours to get to that space because they just don't have any other place to go. And that place becomes even, I mean, it's sacred everywhere, but it becomes a community center that is even just more, I don't know, it's just a platform for safety that they just can't have easily at all. So I think, I don't know, it's hard to really sum it up because if you go to Phoenix at Boycott Bar, you'll find that there's a wonderful Latinx community and they're all chosen family to one another and they all love the bar owner and they look up to Audrey Corley as if she was like their mentor, their queer mentor. And then if you go to Pearl Bar in Houston, it's the same thing. Julie Mabry is the most resilient, incredible, strong woman. And her bar is packed every night and it feels like a nightclub, but there's also a bunch of cool activities that you can do during the day. And it's literally like a platform. It's a community center. It's open. Like it feels like it's open all the time. And people will go out of their way to go there a few times a week because they just feel that need and their connection. And Erica and I always say that these bar owners are like cultural architects. And they just created a universe for everyone to feel safe and just feel like they can be themselves. And it's impossible to just say that one is better than the other because they're all so unique. And there's such a reflection of the incredible women that are really working hard for them. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Elina Street, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to come to P-Town as well.
You've been listening to Healing Wisdom at Outermost Radio. All of our shows are podcasts at WOMR.org. Also check out healingwisdomradioshow.com and contact me at pandora@WOMR.org.